So again, good evening, everyone. And we will start with a short breathing, mindful breathing exercise. Watching the breath mindfully for a few moments. And we can generate good intention by thinking the purpose of my life is to be help and benefit to others as much as I can, directly, indirectly. And there is nothing more beneficial or helpful than to be able to help them to overcome their own karma, their own afflictive emotions, obscurations, which are the root of their own problem and suffering. But to be able to help them with our own direct experience, we ourselves need to reduce and overcome those afflictive emotions, those obscurations. By generating all the positive and beneficial state of mind. Spiritual realizations, especially the highest level of wisdom and bodhicitta mind. And in order to do that, we need to contemplate, meditate, practice correctly, continuously. And for that, we need to remind ourselves of those practices by studying, learning. For that very reason that I'm going to listen, engage in discussion, reflection, contemplations. May our act of coming together, listening, reflecting, contemplating, may all this become cause and conditions to achieve our highest potential, the fully awakened state. So we can be not only help and benefit, but greater help and benefit. And not only to few sentient beings, but to each and every sentient beings without any partiality. Okay.
So the prayers, praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, to the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakening being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits, may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. The heart of the Perfectional Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on mass of Vulture's Mountain, Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also, at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Aryavalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Aryavalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Aryavalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to the unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Sam Gate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Aryavalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Aryavalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Saji Paki Juksing Medo Tram Lida Mingji Nidegen Pali Sangye Shindu Mikte Uva Idrokunamada Sila Chovarsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyatayami Sangye Chodam Soki Chonam La Jamchu Bhaktu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chishin Kipe Sonam Dola Penche Sangye Trupasho Sangye Chodam Soki Chonam La Jamchu Bhaktu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chishin Kipe Sonam Dola Penche Sangye Trupasho Sangye Chodang Shoki Chonam Jangchu Badu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chushen Gipe Sonam Drola Penche Sangye Drupa Shu.
Sangye Dujani Zone, Dawa Tamje Lombe, Tambe Chuni Tebe, Bodam De La Chata Lom. So last week, we discussed the verses where Nagarjuna described about true truth, how all phenomena objects are true truth, conventional truth, and ultimate truth, and how they are those true truths. Not only they don't contradict each other, but they supplement each other, and they support each other, and how those who truth are like two sides of the same coin. In a sense, they are same entity. So emptiness, the ultimate reality, the emptiness, do not negate or the functioning of conventional phenomena. In the same way, why there is a conventional phenomena due to many cause, condition, factors, like certain functionings of the object at the same time. There's no inherent existing while there's a functioning, but there's no inherent existing. While there is functioning, it is still empty. While it is empty, there is still functioning. So, so that, and then here also, we also discuss about where his mentions how the samsara and the suffering in the samsara, arise from the karma and the delusions, and how that delusions arises from the fundamental ignorance, And when we overcome that fundamental ignorance, then how we can achieve nirvana to peace, liberation. So I think more or less, those are some in terms of the verse numbers, we finished 69 and we are on 70. So here, happy mind is tranquil indeed. Tranquil minds without confuse. So here, happy or peaceful mind that is free from all the 84,000 afflictive emotions, together with the root of those afflictive emotions, the fundamental ignorance, the mind, happy mind that is free from all of that is tranquil indeed, that itself is the peace, is the true peace, is the true happiness, is the ultimate happiness, is the lasting happiness. The cessations, the mind that is free of all the afflictive emotions, together with the root of those afflictive emotions, the confused mind of the ignorance, fundamental self-grasping ignorance. That state is indeed, the perfect nirvana, liberation, peace, tranquil, and that is the everlasting, true lasting happiness or peace. And such, tranquil or peaceful mind is without confuse, because it's free from the confused mind of, the self-grasping ignorance that misperceive the reality. That fundamental self-grasping ignorance is confused mind, because it's totally distorted mind, totally mistaken mind, because it totally misperceive the reality, And because such happy mind or blissful mind is free from that ignorance, therefore that mind has not confused, because it's free from that confusion, it's free from that distorted mind, it's free from that mistaken mind or of the ignorance. To have no confusion is to understand the truth. And by understanding the truth, one attains freedom. So how can we overcome that confused mind? How can we overcome that confused mind? That confused mind of confused or distorting or mistaken mind of which is the root of all the afflictive emotions and all the contaminated karma and all the sufferings. How can we overcome that? Is by cultivating the wisdom that realizes the truth. Wisdom that understands or realizes the truth, the ultimate truth, the emptiness. And that is the only way, the the only method to overcome that confused mind, that ignorance, is the wisdom realizing emptiness, the wisdom correctly understanding the emptiness or realizing emptiness. Without that, you can have bodhicitta mind, you can have a compassion mind. It's great, wonderful, but you cannot get rid of that confused mind of fundamental ignorance. When you have understanding or realization of emptiness, the truth, at that time, then you understand, how that mind is distorted, how that mind is mistaken, how that mind is ignorance. Because you see the truth, realize the truth, and that mind is perceiving totally different than what the reality is. And then you, and through that, then you are able to overcome that confused mind of fundamental ignorance. And so that is the, and by understanding the truth, by having the wisdom, realizing the truth, the ultimate truth, the emptiness, then one attains the freedom, liberation, nirvana. The state that is free from samsara, free from all the sufferings, as well as the cause of all the suffering, all the contaminated karma, all the delusions. And that is a true liberation, that is true freedom. Until we achieve that, we don't have real freedom. We don't have real liberations. We can have temporary freedom, but we can never have true freedom. We might have external freedom, but we will not have internal freedom. You might live in a country that's freedom, external freedom, but until you get rid of that confused mind, you are never freedom internally, because you are run by your own afflictive emotions, which is rooted in that confused mind of the ignorance. And so therefore, real true freedom or liberation can be only achieved by understanding, realizing the truth, the emptiness. And so sometimes you see term, shigo, no second doorway to the liberations. And there's only one doorway. The only one doorway is the wisdom realizing the truth or emptiness. And so here it says, such truth is in next one, 71. It is described as suchness. So, so these are different terms that used for same thing. Term used for emptiness or term used for the truth. So sometimes you see such as suchness. Suchness means emptiness. As the reality limit, and that word, I don't know whether that is, I would like more the Jimba's translation, outermost perfections, and and sometimes you use as a signless, also that is referred to emptiness, and as ultimate truth, So these all are terms that describe the reality or the truth. also emptiness, as supreme awakening mind, and it is described also as emptiness. So, supreme awakening mind. When we talk about that, then again we can talk about the mind itself or the object of that supreme mind. Okay. At the very beginning, we talked about two bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta and conventional bodhicitta. Here, the supreme awakening mind meaning ultimate bodhicitta. Okay. And as we described at the very beginning of this class, the ultimate bodhicitta is wisdom that realizes emptiness directly, emptiness or reality or the truth directly, that is supported by conventional bodhicitta mind, that is referred as the supreme or ultimate bodhicitta or awakened mind. The object of that mind, the object of that mind, the reality, the truth, is described as also as emptiness. So so here it's showing all those different terms, they all kind of mean same thing, describing the reality, the truth. Next one. Sometimes emptiness is explained as the basis of all. Both nirvana and samsara arise from the emptiness. I think we did describe a little bit before. Not realizing or understanding emptiness lead you to samsara, and correctly understanding, realizing emptiness lead to the nirvana. Okay? So that is sometimes that is why it is described. Emptiness described as is the basis for both nirvana and samsara. When you don't understand it, then we are being tied, bounded or tied in the samsara, circle in the samsara, and experience the suffering of samsara. When you correctly understand or realize that, then it leads you to nirvana. So that is where here, next one. Those who do not understand emptiness are not receptive vehicle for liberations. If we don't understand emptiness, then one cannot achieve true liberation. Nirvana is impossible. As I mentioned before, you can be a very kind person, compassionate persons, incredible compassion. You can be even have bodhicitta. You can be bodhisattva. But if you don't have the wisdom realizing emptiness, that will not be able to free you from the samsara. That will not be able to free you from all the delusions and the root of all the delusions. So therefore you will continue to circle in the samsara. And so such ignorant beings, if you don't have the realization of emptiness, then you will have this fundamental ignorance, self-grasping ignorance. And due to that self-grasping ignorance, then other delusion, attachments, anger, jealousy, pride, resentment, grudges, and all other negative emotion will arise. And due to arising those negative emotions, then we will engage in creating actions, creating karma, contaminated karma. due to one of those afflictive emotions. Either you create negative karma, or even you create a positive karma, it is still contaminated karma. Due to that, such ignorance will revolve in the existent prison of 6 classes of being. So then, we will be revolving or cycling within this cyclic existence or samsara, the prison of samsara of 6 classes of being, from one ram to another rams. There are 6 different rams of different 6 beings, and so when we have strong negative karma, then we are born in one of the unfortunate low rams, one of those 3. And even when we have created a positive karma, if we don't have realization and emptiness, that positive karma is still motivated by that ignorance, that fundamental ignorance. Because it's motivated that fundamental ignorance, still it is a contaminated karma. Even it's a virtuous, it's still contaminated karma. That being a contaminated karma, then it will lead to high rebirth, one of 3 high rebirth, but still within the samsara realms. It's not free from the samsara, still within the samsara. It's like being put in a prison with one cell with no window to another prison, bigger with many window, better than previous one, but still you are in prison. Still not free from the prison of samsara. Yeah, it's just like being in one small cell with no window, to another bigger prisons where you have bigger room, light, window, and all of that. Still, you are not free from the prison. Still, you are not free from the prisons. Still, you are in the prisons. So as long as we are in one of those 6 classes of being within one of the 6 realms, we are still in the prison of samsara. We are still in the prison of samsara. We are not only, one is not totally free from the samsara, free from the suffering permanently. There might be some less suffering in the higher rebirth, but still it's not total freedom from the suffering. So next one, here, as I mentioned at the very beginning, again, at the very beginning of the starting of the class, there are 2 bodhisattvas, okay? Or 2 bodhisattva approach in their path. The bodhisattvas with the sharp faculty and bodhisattva with less sharp faculties. The bodhisattva with the sharp faculty, first, they have realization and emptiness, and then they generate the conventional bodhicitta later. First, wisdom realizing emptiness. That wisdom realizing emptiness leads them to have compassion and bodhicitta mind. That is their approach on the path in terms of sequences. And then there are other bodhisattvas with the less sharp faculties, whose approach is first cultivate the great compassion bodhicitta mind. Once you have the great compassion bodhicitta mind, then next you have realization and emptiness. Work to have wisdom realizing emptiness. So one start with the emptiness and bodhicitta, conventional bodhicitta. The others start with the conventional bodhicitta, and then the wisdom realizing emptiness. Okay, Like in Shantideva, for example, in the Guides of Bodhisattva way of life, at the very beginning, he explained the Bodhicitta, mostly in chapter 8, and even before that, preliminary practice for that. In chapter 9, then the wisdom comes later. Bodhicitta comes first. Compassion and Bodhicitta come first, and wisdom come later. Here, the sequence is the opposite. Okay? First emptiness and then Bodhicitta. And that is because, again, two different Bodhisattvas approach, and either is fine, it depends on individuals, So here, because it is here, because at the very beginning, he already started, and then again here, he explained here. When this emptiness as explained, okay, when this emptiness as explained, the most, subtle emptiness, the emptiness that is empty of inherent existence or truly existence, Because again, sometimes we can see the word emptiness, but it could mean different according to different school of thoughts. Even within the different Buddhist school of thought, that emptiness means different. And also in other school of thought, they might describe emptiness, but what they are talking is very different. So that is why he has, as explained, when this emptiness, as explained earlier, that is empty of inherent nature, that's empty of existing from its own side independently, how everything is dependent arisings, is thus meditated upon by the yogis, So, as we mentioned before, as Kamala Shila explained, the stage of meditations, he explained about 3 types of wisdom. Wisdom relies on the emptiness through hearing or learning. And then wisdom, then as you increase, wisdom arising from reflecting on the meaning that you have studied, that you have learned, that you have heard. That wisdom becomes more profound, more subtle than previous wisdom. And once you have wisdom, having reflected on the meaning, and then coming to convictions or conclusions, then meditating, contemplating it again and again and again. And then the wisdom arising from the meditations. That is what, among those 3 wisdom, that is the most profound wisdom. And that is the wisdom, we want to achieve. But of course, in order to have the wisdom through meditation, first you need to have the wisdom through reflection and wisdom through studying or hearing, And so once you study, learn, reflect on the meaning of emptiness, and once you have reflected, then the yogi or the practitioner try to meditate on that, trying to meditate on that again and again, again and again, And through that, when you have a realization on emptiness, when you have the realization or spiritual experience through meditations, then here is a no doubt there will arise in them, in the such practitioners, a sentiment attached to others' welfare. So here, sentiment attached does not mean ordinary attachment. Here is referring to compassions. Then compassions towards other sentient being will arise. Okay. So the wisdom reliance on the emptiness through the meditation would give rise through the compassions towards other sentient beings. And through compassion, the great compassion, then the conventional bodhisattva can be achieved or can be cultivated. I don't remember the name of the sutra, but in one of the sutras, Buddha gave an example of the emptiness being like a womb, mother's womb, and the compassion bodhisattva being the child. You know, the child coming out of the mother's womb. So in that, one of the sutras, Buddha gave that example, you know, the emptiness being like the mother's womb, and the compassion and the bodhisattva being like a child. That comes. So it is. This one is more or less same, you know, that the wisdom realizing emptiness give birth to the great compassion in bodhisattva mind. So as I mentioned before, you know, and this approach is more powerful approach. But this is not only the approach, you know. And maybe we can try to understand how that can give rise to the compassion and bodhisattva mind. We can try to maybe see, or when you have realization and emptiness, and when you realize, you know, how everything is dependent arising, how nothing exists inherently or independently, how everything is dependent arising, then you understand you yourself is dependent arisings. Your experience of dependent arisings. Your happiness is dependent arisings. You know, you yourself depend on others for your survival, for your existence. Your happiness, your experience depend on others, comes through others, depend on others. You know, so when you understand that, your own happiness, your own well-being, your own existence come into existence by depending on others and others' contributions, others' actions, directly, indirectly, you know, then of course, if you can understand that, if you can feel that, you feel closer to them. You feel they are closer to you. You feel you are closer to them. More close, more dear. And when you feel more close, more dear, it's easy to develop compassions. Compassion come easily. Compassion can arise more easily when you feel someone very dear, very close, you know. So that gives rise to the compassion, you know, someone who has that kind of inclination towards studying, practicing, towards cultivate bodhisattva, and when you have that wisdom, that understand the dependent arising in that. Also through dependent arisings, understanding of dependent arisings, by understanding how others depending on you, you are depending on others, you know, how you and others are merely level, there's nothing existing from its own side, then it dissolves the boundaries between self and others. And then the big wall at the moment that we have a wall, you know, boundary in the wall between me and others. That boundaries will be collapsing, dissolve when you see, there's no inherent self and others. There's no self and others exist on its own side, but everything is merely imputed. There's self because other, there's others because self. So through that understanding, we are able to dissolve and destroy the boundaries and the wall. And when there's less of that boundary and that wall, then again, it is easy to feel compassion, cherishing. Just as we cherish ourselves, we will also easy to cherish others equally, just like that. And through that, again, it opens our heart to feel love, compassion, and cherish others more easily. Then when you have this boundary and wall and feel, there is inherently concrete self there, inherently concrete or solid I here, or self or I here and others there, So through that, that is how it. Also, when we have realization of emptiness, then you begin to see, how that fundamental ignorance is distorted mind, mistaken mind, and ignorance. At the moment, because we don't have realization of emptiness, even though we hear, that ignorance is distorted mind, ignorance is kind of confused, mistaken mind, ignorance, or that self-grasping, but still, we don't truly understand how that is distorted, ignorant. We don't understand by experience that, we still kind of be deceived and misled by that self-grasping all the time. But when you realize that emptiness, the truth, then you begin to say, oh, that mind is totally distorted, confused, totally mistaken, because that is not how the reality, this is the reality, and that mind perceive the object to exist totally opposite of how it exists, Through that understanding, then with experientially, you perceive that is distorted, that mind is distorted, the self-grasping is distorted, mistaken, confused. And you understand, because it is a mistaken, distorted mind, it has no solid basis. It is based on untruth. That mind is based, you understand, is not based on truth, it's based on untruth. Whereas the wisdom realizing emptiness is based on truth. Therefore, when you cultivate that wisdom, then you begin to see that, that ignorance can be overcome, that ignorance can be destroyed with that wisdom. Not only that, also you, on top of that, when you also understand the nature of mind is undiluted, unpolluted in its nature, that is explained in materials and Tathagata Sutras and other materials writings and so forth, how the nature of mind is undiluted in its nature, how, we all have Buddha nature. On top of that, then you realize that self-grasping is totally distorted, and then you begin to see, that can be overcome. If that ignorance can be overcome, then all the other delusion that arises because that ignorance can be overcome. And you begin to see those delusions temporary, and they can be overcome. And if the delusion can overcome, you begin to see nirvana is possible. Liberation is possible. Then liberation and nirvana doesn't seem like too far away, unachievable, but you see closer and achievable, possible. And when you see that is possible, when you see enlightenment is possible, nirvana is possible, then, it gives you a lot of enthusiasm, inspirations, energy to achieve it, and the wish to achieve that, the wish to achieve enlightenment. At the moment, a lot of time we talk about enlightenment, but there's no real, from depth of your heart, there's no real aspiration to achieve it or enthusiasm to achieve it because we feel like it is not possible or it's too far away or it's not, it is possible. But when you sit in that, and when you see enlightenment is possible, then the wish to achieve that enlightenment out of compassion arises more strongly, more easily. So then it gives rise to the Bodhicitta mind. The wish to achieve enlightenment in order to liberate all sentient beings. So it gives rise to the Bodhicitta mind. Also, when you see those, by overcoming those delusions, then all the suffering can be overcome completely because all the suffering comes through the actions or the karma, and the karma comes through the delusions. And so when you see all the delusion can overcome, all the suffering can overcome, but due to not understanding that those can be overcome, delusion can overcome. Due to not understanding that, due to not understanding the root of those suffering is that their own delusions, therefore sentient beings are engaged in the suffering. And when you understand that, your compassion grows more stronger because you see, they don't have to experience suffering, but you see them suffering. Just for example, when they are in a situation, someone is suffering, someone is suffering. You see the suffering, you feel the sufferings. And you feel you have a compassion and a wish, you wish that if they are free from the sufferings, wish they don't suffer, wish maybe if they would be able to be free from the sufferings. But if there's nothing that they can do about it, you just feel it, but you don't feel like, I need to take the responsibility, I need to do to free them from suffering because it is nothing you can do about it. Do you get it? Whereas if you see there is something that can be overcome, and then you feel like, you must be something to help them to overcome that suffering. And so you have better, stronger, stronger sufferings. And that is if we see in our life, in any kind of suffering, when we see others suffering, it's true, If there is nothing you can do about it, even if you see the suffering, you just feel it and you wish they don't suffer. You just feel the compassion that they don't suffer, wish they don't have to suffer. But then you don't feel like I need to do something to free them from suffering, taking that responsibility, that compassion, stronger compassions. Because there's nothing you feel like nothing you can do. But when you feel there is something they are suffering and they don't have to suffer, that suffering can be overcome, then the compassion, I should do something to, because they don't know how to do by themselves, and how to free them from that pain, suffering, and then you feel there is more stronger taking that responsibility, compassion, stronger compassions, taking the responsibility to free them from the pain and suffering, because that can be done. So similarly, that is how it is. When you see the delusion, all sentient beings do not have to suffer. Suffering can be ended because delusion can be ended, because the ignorance can be ended. But due to not understanding the cause of the suffering, due to not understand the delusion of the cause of the suffering, then they engage into, even if they do not want suffering, they engage into the cause that lead to the suffering. And therefore, when you see them and you feel even more stronger compassions, wanting them, not only wishing them, but wanting to free them from their suffering, cause of their suffering, and wanting to take responsibility yourself to do that, because you see that is possible. That is possible. They don't have to suffer. They don't have to suffer. The suffering can be ended. And so therefore, that is how, when you have realization and emptiness, it gives more stronger compassions, more stronger compassions. Yeah, so that is that. The next one. From next is explaining how to develop the bodhicitta, conventional bodhicitta mind. And in terms of conventional bodhicitta mind, and as you see, there are two meditations, or two different meditations or tools to develop the bodhicitta mind. What we call 7 point of cause and effect technique, and equalizing and exchanging self with other, two different techniques you find. And like in the writing of the material asangas, you find mainly this the technique or meditations of 6 point of cause and effect. How to develop bodhicitta by engaging in this meditation of this particular technique, what we call the instructions or the instruction on the 7 point of cause and effect. And then in Shantideva's Guide to Bossable Way of Life, he explained different approach or technique to develop bodhicitta mind by what we call equalizing, exchanging self with others, that particular technique. And both of those techniques are kind of passed from the Buddha, Buddha to Maitreya, Asanga, the 7 cause of the 7 point of cause and effect, and from Maitreya to Manjushri, and then eventually Shantideva, and that equalizing and exchanging self with others, And either way, one can use any of those techniques to develop the bodhicitta mind. By using any of those techniques, anyone can develop bodhicitta mind. But of course, for certain individual, one particular technique is more effective than others. So, and one thing we have to, it might also come in later too. We have to remember certain particular teachings or technique or meditation might not suit you or might not be so effective to you, might not seem reasonable for you, but that doesn't mean that is the case for everyone. That doesn't mean, we put down the other technique, other meditations, other teachings. It might not be very effective, powerful to you, or suitable for you, or maybe not even reasonable for you, but that might be just reasonable, suitable, powerful to other persons to change their mind, to transform their heart equally. Sometimes we tend, because it doesn't suit me or it doesn't make reason to me, then it is feel like it is kind of useless. And sometimes we might just put down others. So that's same with these two techniques. For certain individual, one technique is more suitable and effective, powerful than others. But either way, both techniques lead to the same result, cultivating the bodhicitta mind. That is the key. If it leads to that result, to cultivate the bodhicitta mind, that is the key. So verse number 74, that's where Nagarjuna, starting with the first, the technique of the instruction or technique of 7 point of cause and effect. So that one. Towards those beings. So, okay, let me, we won't go into details, but in that technique of meditations, there are 7 points, as it says, 7 point of cause and effect, And first 6 points are cause, and the 7th one is a result, the bodhicitta mind. And the first 6 are different state of mind that lead to the bodhicitta mind. So the 7 cause of effect. First is recognizing all sentient beings as being your mother. Mother is just giving an example. You can, for some people, if they have difficulty with that, you can think all sentient beings. If you have more easy to feel compassion of your father, you can try to see every sentient being as being your father. For some people, if they feel they are having a difficulty feeling kindness of their father or mother, they might feel easy to feel kindness of their grandparent, grandfather, grandmother. Same thing, you use everyone has been your grandfather, everyone your grandmother. For some individual, they might feel easily to feel compassion and kindness of their siblings or someone else, relative or not even relative, and other beings. So the point is, you start with someone that where you can feel easily the kindness and compassion of someone. And then on the basis of that, then you try to see everyone has been like that person in the past. But normally, the most in all the sutras and teachings is we use the mother, because that is the most kind and compassionate. Of course, individual might have different experience for different reasons, but in general, that is what it is, is one thing whether one is able to feel that kindness and compassion or not, but in reality, there's a lot of kindness and compassion, with mothers. So anyway, so the first point is recognizing all sentient beings has been your mothers. Second point is, once you recognize that everyone has been your most kind, compassion, or been mothers. Second point is remember the kindness, feeling the kindness. We reflect, contemplate on kindness of mothers. Sometimes when we feel, we might not feel it, but because we haven't given enough thought, we haven't reflected, we haven't contemplated enough. If you reflect, contemplate, if you give enough time, if you give enough space to contemplate and think of that, eventually you will feel the kindness. So, second is through reflecting, contemplating kindness, feeling the kindness of the mothers. Third is once you feel that kindness, cultivating a strong wish to repay the kindness. Of course, most time, if you feel the kindness and their compassion and kindness, the wish to pay the kindness will come quite easily. It will come quite easily. And then, cultivating the loving kindness. So that is the fourth, cultivating the loving kindness. The wish to see them happy. The wish to see them, having a good health, peace, happy, prosperities, good life, happy life, and cause of that, not only wish to see them, cultivating the, sense of taking the responsibility to help them to have such happy life or, to develop this happiness. And the fifth one is cultivating compassion towards the kind mother. And the compassion is, the wish to see them free from all the problem, all the suffering, all the pain, and the cause of all the pain and suffering. And not only wishing them to see from all the suffering, all the pain, all the problem and cause of that, but again, taking the responsibility, taking responsibility on yourself, taking the responsibility on yourself to help, to contribute, to support them to be free from all their problem, all their pain, all their suffering and cause of them. So that is the fifth one is the compassion. And the sixth one is, special attitude or universal responsibility. Not only you want them to see happy and free from suffering, not only you take the responsibility to lead them to happiness and free them from suffering, but making a stronger, taking even stronger responsibility to do that by yourself alone, without relying on others. Taking the responsibility on oneself, I'm going to lead them to happiness and cause of happiness by myself alone. I'm going to free them from suffering and cause of them from suffering by myself alone. And so so that is the sixth, the what you call saksam, which means special attitude or universal responsibility to do yourself. And those 6 are the cause. So, how each of previous understanding lead to the next state of mind or realizations. And once you have that special insight, special attitude, then again, even as much as we want to take the responsibility on yourself to free them from suffering, lead them to happiness, but at the moment, in our present situation, when ourselves are unenlightened, we can only be help and benefit very limited way, only very limited way. As much as you have that intentions, incredible love, compassions, incredible special attitude, but as long as you are unenlightened, we can still help, we can still be benefit to reduce their pain, to help them to improve their happiness, but what we can do is very, very small, very limited. When we ourselves doesn't know how to be happy, when we ourselves doesn't know how to free from our pain, how are we going to help others to do that? How are we? Even you have the wish, that is wonderful to have that wish, that compassion, that is wonderful. But in reality, in actions, how you are going to do, how much you can do is very limited. Because you yourself doesn't know how to. So then the wish to become fully enlightened, because if you can become a fully awakened and fully enlightened, then you can be incredible help and benefit without any bias, without any conditions, and without any limitations, by knowing exactly, how to help them, by understanding their predisposition, by understanding their state of mind, by understanding their situation, what is required, and having all the skillful means, the ability to do that. And then, you can really be benefit and help. When you understand that the wish to achieve that fully awakened or fully enlightened state, then arises very strongly. And that is the Bodhicitta mind. That is the mind of awakening of Bodhicitta mind. The result, the 7th. So that is, so here is, that is where it is. So here, that is verse number 74. Towards those beings that have bestowed benefit upon me in the past. So, such as through being my parent or friends. So here, so by recollecting, remember how each and every sentient being has been, my most, kind, compassionate mother, fathers, or friends, in the past. Even though we cannot recognize now, but everyone has been, every sentient being has been our most kind, caring, loving, compassionate mother, father, friends. Not only one time, many times, countless times. Many times as a human being, many times as an animal, many times as another beings. So if we say now, how come that we don't remember them? How come we cannot recognize them? Well, forget about many lifetimes. When I was young, there were some people who took care of me. If I see them, I will not recognize them. They will not recognize me, I will not recognize them. just in our own life, within just 30, 40 years, we don't recognize each other. You know, some of my relatives visit my parents or house. They don't recognize me. I don't recognize them. Until someone explain, you know, I am their sons, my parents' son, and with name and this. So even in just this life, you know, maybe many of your classmates when you are in kindergarten 1, 2, many of them probably, if you meet in the town, in part of the world, probably you will not recognize them, they will not recognize you. Does that mean you have not been classmates? Does that mean you have not played together? Does that mean you have not helped each other and all of that? Our memories, of course, there is memories, it's not so sharp. And secondly, there is changes all the time. And so then, you know, we don't recognize that. You know, so through being my parents' friend, bestow benefit upon me in the past, you know, through that they have been very kind, compassion, caring, loving, helping, benefiting me. So that is, so, you know, that is, so in that it explains how everyone has sentient beings as your parent or mother, and then remember their kindness, okay, bestowing the benefit, their loving kindness, reflecting, contemplating, and trying to feel that, their love, their compassion, their help, their support, their benefit, you know. And then I shall start to repay their kindness. So once you feel, once you have reflected, contemplated on their kindness, their compassion, their support, help, and once you feel their pain, once you feel their kindness, compassion, then you cultivate a wish to repay the kindness. Then you develop the wish to repay the kindness. So to understand these points, first point, of course, then, you know, you need to have some understanding of, you know, past life, future life, many life, you know, and that is another big subject. That itself is a kind of, yeah, big subject itself. So today maybe I will stop here, and yeah, maybe see any questions. Yes.
Hi, I'm Karen Peterson. I have two questions. So effective emotions are rooted in the confused mind, and the confused mind can be overcome with realizing the truth of fundamental emptiness, both conventionally and ultimately. So, however, we are animals who are always the prisoner of our senses. So I don't quite understand how one is supposed to function from day to day, because our senses are always engaging in the world. So that's the first question.
Yeah, you know, there's the senses, but you don't, it's not the senses that is the problem. It's the mind that follow after the senses. You know, my eye sees something, then after that my mind started to make stories around that. Oh, it's good, it's bad, it's nice, it's all this is, is the mental consciousness that follow after the senses. After you hear, senses are just more like a mirror. It reflects the objects. And then after that, then once it's a mirror, then you started to interpret things. Same way, then our mental consciousness started to interpret that. And so if we don't interpret incorrectly in that, then with the sense, seeing things, hearing things, that itself is not a problem. It doesn't be a problem. Seeing things is not a problem. Hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, whatever those are, itself not a problem. It is the mental consciousness that follow after what our sense contact with the objects, and then that is the way the problem comes.
So the second question was, you talk about contaminated karma. So I'm a little confused. Doesn't the nightly purification ritual somehow fix that a little bit, or is there no hope?
Purifications practices definitely help us to overcome the negative karmas. And it can reduce maybe the level of contaminated karma, but without realizing emptiness, we cannot totally overcome the contaminated karma. Unfortunately, that is why realizing emptiness is a key, to free from the samsara. Without that, we can have a better rebirth in samsara, better experience, less suffering, more happiness within the samsara beings. But still, if you want to free from the samsara by freeing from all the contaminated karma, not only the negative karma, but also positive contaminated karma, then one need to have the realization of emptiness. That is the only way out. So it is that there is no hope, but there is no other means to do that except wisdom, understanding the emptiness. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone also anyone in the room? If not,
I have a question.
Yes,
then,
please.
Gautama. So this is in the context of when you were speaking about, ultimate bodhicitta, which is, the bodhicitta that is supported by, wisdom realizing emptiness, right? Or the other way around, rather. Yeah. Yeah. So, so my question, and so, so the object of that emptiness, you said, is empty. The object of that wisdom realizing emptiness is emptiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is that what in the first line of the Miksama prayer, where it says, Avalokiteshvara, a great treasure of objectless compassion. So that objectless compassion, is that what it's referring to, the ultimate bodhicitta, which doesn't have, which has emptiness as the object, or rather, doesn't have a, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That objectless means, the wisdom realizing the emptiness. That says there are no inherent objects. So in that sense, Avalokiteshvara, the great compassions, that great compassion that is without self-grasping. You can have a attachment, compassion, still self-grasping or grasping. So that one is compassions, support, compassions without a self-grasping, instead is supported by the wisdom. And in the second verse, it is the same when it says stainless.
Yeah, objectless compassion, Manjushri, Manjushri, Lord of Stainless Wisdom.
Stainless
Yeah,
wisdom.
Stainless Wisdom, yeah.
There, when it says stainless, here is saying stainless of self-cherishing or self-grasping, not grasping, selfish attitude or self-cherishing. So that means wisdom that is supported by the bodhisattva. Do you get it? So Avalokiteshvara with the compassion that is supported by the wisdom without the self-grasping that grasps on the objects, without that objects. And the second one, Manjushri, the compassion, wisdom without stain. Here stain refer to self-cherishing. And so that wisdom that is supported by without the self-cherishing, meaning wisdom supported by the compassion of the bodhisattva mind. Yeah.
Okay, so
So we can do the dedications.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Gevadinyo duda lama sangye dugyone doshika malupa terisala Changchub Sencho Rinpoche Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyurchi Ke Wanyam Pa Me Payam Gong Le Gong Du Pelwan Sho Gangri Rawe Kurwe Zinkam Dir Pendang Dewa Malu Jungwe Ne Tenre Zigwang Tenzin Gatso Yi Zape Site Bardu Tengurchi. Prayer for Rinpoche's swift return. Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Stravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Lozang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, through explanation as practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother of living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the unreceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of the bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you. Good night, everyone. On the Zoom, everyone here in person. Thank you. Bye.